Hello, everybody, it is me, Game Penguin 1, and today, in an ongoing effort to try to diversify a bit of my content, because apparently the console wars are starting to die down, I have decided to take a look at an interesting modding development. This one is by a character by the name of Moosh, and has to do with a Super Smash Bros. Mod, and brings up the good old chestnut of paywalling mods. There is a number of sides to this, and there is a number of responses that I wanted to get to. I even had to cut down this video because I had to yap so much. But overall, I think this will be a more informative thing than anything else, and I will try to be as neutral as possible when it comes to this. Not really picking any sides, but reading out some of the responses and giving my own opinion on them. With that being said, if you like what it is that I do and support me in either way, shape, or form, other than like and subscribe, which is always enough, links down to everything in the description below. I do stream every Sunday at 12 p.m. EST. Come by and say hi. With all that being said, let's get started. So, of course, where does this all begin? Well, with the good old character of Moosh here. Moosh is a modder for a game that is known as Super Smash Bros. Melee. This is, I believe, like the third or fourth game in the series. It's one of the more modern titles, and one that is no longer in circulation. Now, of course, he decided to mod in Balatro, or specifically, I believe that this character's name is like Jester or something. Whoever the Jester is in Balatro, and then make a little guy that is based on that, and making all of his attacks and things based on that as well. Basically, he can create the entirety of this. But he originally made this so that way you could then go out and, pay for it on his Patreon. Now, a lot of people didn't really like this, nor did a lot of people really think that this was a good idea. But there were some people that were defending him, but where do I stand on this? Well, in all honesty, there really is no correct answer here. While yes, as a asset creator and a person who has done modding and retexturing and model work for gaming myself, I can tell you that it does take a lot of fucking effort in order to even just retexture a specific model in order to make it something somewhat original, especially with the methods that I use. For something like this, you'd have to program specific actions and hook those actions up to a lot of different aspects, and I don't know Melee specifically, but you probably have to use a specific cracked version of the game on PC, but that's neither here nor there. Overall, this does take a lot of work, and paying $10 for something that does take a lot of work usually is offering a service for something. But of course, not everyone saw it that way, much like Salato here, who decided to yoink the entirety of the mod, put it into Google Drive, into the cloud, and release it onto the internet. No doubt basically stealing, quote-unquote, person's money from his wallet. Nabbit doing the exact same thing, saying that he nabbed the mod and doing another Google Drive link. Now, of course, this isn't the first nor last time that these sorts of problems will inevitably surface, because this sort of piracy does actually happen, even in spaces where there isn't necessarily modding in the first place. For some strange example, there are people who do pay for other aspects of games that are quote-unquote technically mods. For example, if you buy, say, a digital currency in, say, Roblox, you are technically, as long as it's user-generated content, or UGCs, you are technically buying a mod. Oh, but Penguin, those are models. Those are things that are made using official Roblox tools, and official Roblox people make them and, put them up for sale to make money. Yes, kind of like how this person is doing the same thing. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a good thing or a bad thing. Of course, all user-generated content is made by users. Just certain companies do have policies when it comes to charging for them. Now, I think in specific terms, if the company themselves do it, it is very legal and very adopted because, it's done officially through the company. But not everyone does that. Here's an interesting factoid about most modding communities out there. They're technically illegal. Now, the reason why I say technically is because more often than not, the technicality comes in the form of copyright infringement, which we will get into in a second here. But the mainline thing with having to deal with this is so long as the company gives consent or gives implied consent through, specific reasons, it's usually not chased up for in court. But if the company gives you consent explicitly in the terms of, say, a modding tools or modding in general, then guess what? You're all good. Everything's fine. Everything's copacetic. You can even monetize them if it's in the actual EULA. You have to specifically agree to these terms and conditions whenever you do this. For a strange example of, say, pirating mods, which is a thing that does happen in the modding scene, these pirated mods are illegal, despite the fact that, say, they could be producing two of the same mod stuff. Now, let's give a quick example. You have mod A. Mod A is on an official site and was made officially by the actual person using the official mod tool. Mod B is just a copy of mod A, but with one or two things maybe changed illegally. These things are usually used not using the standard modding tools and usually not agreeing to any sorts of EULA. That second mod B is illegal and is actually infringing more on the copywritten works of mod A, not the actual copyright company themselves, because they handed over that rights whenever the person actually ended up using the official tools. So it gets a little bit more muddier there, but obviously the nitty-gritty of this, you'd have to go and talk with a lawyer about this more specifically. But that is the more than general announcement. There is also copyright infringement, but we'll get into that in a quick second here. Of course, there was also people out there that were asking some very interesting questions here, like Avery with, you all understand that blindly accepting a paywall for a mod sets a bad precedent, right? It depends. I think that there is definitely a one way to be said about modding and giving your paywall to specific modding and even things like this being a retexture, usually under some sort of commission if a person specifically asks for it. But that is usually handled through one-on-one interactions, and when you commission someone, you are usually paying them for a specific service that you can't yourself actually do. Now, obviously, people who are on commission or on some sort of verbal contract or something like that are easy enough to end up making for whatever reason, but overall, the entirety of, say, this modding community, or just paywalling one specific mod, doesn't necessarily set a bad precedent, because while, yes, it could in theory do that, most mods, and again, 99% of mods, to my knowledge, are mostly free, or at least the ones that call themselves mod. The remaining, 1 to 10% that would be otherwise paid for usually fall under different circumstances and different things. So I don't think that blindly accepting mods sets a bad precedent itself. I think that just saying that just accepting modding as a tool to be used and whether or not a person can copyright infringe or whatnot is one of those things that's very strange here. And again, usually would have to be developed in court, but at the same time, it's hard to really say. Claire says, do not harass this guy, but paid mods are a cancer on the game and should never have you should never have to pay for mods. With another person by the name of Nathan Silver here saying selling mods should be illegal, so you should make your mods free of charge. Now, again, this is kind of the other side of that same coin. The amount of people that say that mods should be free for everyone more or less themselves are the same kinds of people who are not necessarily your target audience, nor are your target people or customers that you are selling to, just verbatim. Most of the people in that context do not want or appreciate your services specifically in order to do that. This is just how it is in the world of anything goes and anything can be sold as a product or service. So this is just general marketing terms. But overall, you shouldn't be harassing or sending people specific things in order to, make them get your way. You can freely protest and freely criticize 100%. I am not going to stop you, but basically just basically denouncing their rights as a person to try to do something is very dumb, even if it's a gray area in terms of rights right now. Dr. Pepper bringing up another point of you are going to get into legal trouble for making money off a game you didn't create and using a character IP you don't legally own. ask yourself why all the mods are on forums are completely free when they clearly took work and labor to create. Now, again, this does come in some sort of weird surprise here because while, yes, there are some of these places that do have these mods and forums and stuff, they do actually have ways to monetize that content. Just they don't get the mods that you don't pay for the mods that are there. You pay for the engagement you can do to have the person continue to make mods. Now, again, this does come into play with various other aspects of things, but there is such a thing as costs and costs of living and server costs and blah, 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 blah. Overall, saying that these mods are quote unquote free is, while true to some extent, a lot of the people, if you take a look deeper, do have other means to kind of monetize their content, especially when it comes to making mods, if that's their full-time job. But again, they do this more or less out of the goodness of their heart. And while, yes, I don't agree that a person should immediately monetize their content, I think that you should have had at least somewhat of a backlog here. Because Moosh himself didn't actually have a backlog before this, but I think we're getting a little bit more ahead of ourselves. Another person by the name of Golden Lamb Statue does bring up another interesting side to this, where they thought that the actual mod itself wasn't worth it for the amount that you are paying for. For example, for just this particular situation, it was paying around $10 to a Patreon subscription service for one mod. Now, that's $10 for one mod, and you would then have to pay that monthly or pay that every time you would want access to, say, a different mod or to, say, another thing if the person releases it onto their Patreon. This, again, isn't necessarily the greatest idea, but does inevitably bring forth the opportunity of, well, people just getting angry like this. Overall, while yeah, I do think that the Patreon idea is an interesting idea in general, I do also believe that just having the mod itself be free and just having people be directed towards your Patreon if they like the mod is a good way to start business. Offering up, say, a free sample for something and then going forward and making more original things down the line. I think that establishing that idea, at least when it comes to trying to monetize yourself, is a way to do that. I mean, again, I don't actually personally make money off of this channel because I don't have a big enough audience for that, but I try to direct people towards places that I actually make money off of or places towards things that I actually do. Just kind of how things work. Scud also brings up a point of not owning the IP and not infringing on material whatsoever, then feel free to paywall it. This is selling a copyrighted character from a trademarked game you have no rights to. This is quite literally illegal. Again, if the mod itself wasn't already illegal, that is modding Smash Bros. Melee, as again, Nintendo specifically didn't give him a EULA or anything to sign, that he modded for it, then yeah, certainly. Again, like I said before, a lot of people don't realize that most modding systems or most mods are technically illegal unless they were made with official modding tools from the actual developers themselves. That usually inquires with some sort of EULA or some sort of agreement that the two people then make to then be able to do that. This is for one of the reasons, again, why, say, something like TF2, which does have a quote-unquote modding scene, is actually fine because they have things like the Hammer Editor and SFM and stuff like that, which utilizes the actual assets that, say, Valve officially uses, and they just released it for free and said, here you go, allowing the community to take over for it and do their job for them, which is why they were able to make TF2 more or less free to play and sit on it and just print money with that for fucking years. So, Tenna says, modding is an art form. This is so shitty how people treat modding like it's not at all a hard thing to do. And if you make it so people pay for it, you're treated as the spawn of Satan. I guarantee you most people harassing this guy wouldn't have even installed the mod for free anyway. I do agree with that point as well, because like I said before, the people who are more or less complaining about the paywall for the mods were not actually your customers to begin with. Your customers were the people that are willing to pay for that. But again, when you're dealing with the modding and community in general, that sort of a paying and that sort of goodwill and kindness doesn't extend too far. Why is that? For a few different reasons, but the main one reason seems to be that modding itself is just seen as something that is done out of the kindness of people's hearts. does, and not realizing that there is an actual underlying community of people who do end up paying for modding or paying for specific things. Now, again, this does depend on person to person, but I do agree with that. The people who even got this for free, or the people who would have gotten this for free, wouldn't have installed it even if it was free, because this, again, was just the only reason I got so huge was because of how much it was being paid for. Cow here with saying, I don't understand why people are mad at this mod for being paywall. People put their time, expertise, and labor into this, and it only seems reasonable to me that they're compensated in some way. Why is the modding community so oppressed to paying the artists who make the community possible? I do think that there is a little bit of a stigma when it comes to paying artists in some cases. I mean, there is a number of cases of people who basically got completely and utterly scammed out of money and compensation for work that they have done. I myself know of at least a couple of my friends who have gotten scammed for one reason or another, whether it being a customer or whether it being a person that they are working under or working for commission-wise. It really does depend, and sometimes people taking payment up front or taking half up front, usually as an insurance policy, is a good idea if you want to do that. I myself do it upon delivery of the actual product, where they pay me, I deliver the product, and bing bada boom, that's how that ends up working. But at the end of the day, that's for different services entirely. And overall, the last couple of things here, I'm just going to flash up on screen. I'm not going to really read these, but you can go ahead and read them in your own time, because we're getting a little bit into the weeds here. Both of these just don't seem to understand how some of these things are a little bit ridiculous. Both of these sides are being a little bit ridiculous. Well, at least the ones that are being overly defensive and the people that are being overly aggressive in this concept. Both sides are kind of at fault here, because there was inevitably enough of a backlash that Moosh himself decided to, well, make a response. He put an entire Google Doc together, which basically showed why he's paywalling the mods and how he went about creating the Jimbo mod for Super Smash Brothers in the first place. I'm not going to go read through the whole document, just because overall it's basically a lot of nerd talk and a lot of basically development talk, and I don't think you want to hear me talk about that for the next few hours or so. He has removed the membership tiers from the Patreon because the backlash got super bad at this point, and because he's received too much harassment, numerous insults, and quite a few DMs telling him to do the deed, among other nasty things. Going to the actual Patreon itself, he, at the time of this, only had 4 posts. He does have, I think, a 5th or 6th one up now, where he only had 25 paying members at $184.5 a month, which is a pretty decent Patreon, I'm going to be honest. It's on the very much smaller side, but I mean, 25 paying members for your stuff is pretty solid. Now, again, I'm not sure how much that has fluctuated since then, but I mean, those are your loyal customers. At the same time, I do think that the response that he had here with removed all the membership tiers, so no one would have to subscribe or become a member, but those who have already subscribed should still have access to Jimbo. The response to that has been extremely horrible, and the juice is not worth the squeeze, as he says. Overall, it's just really dumb, and overall, weird how this ended up having this negative of a response. But he is not done, as he did end up making a cease and desist. He put a cease and desist letter from Nintendo into Melee. So how much the courts finds when you stack up against your opponents with a over copyrighted character. I believe this was one that he got for the sort of cease and desist from Nintendo. I'm not sure if this is meant to be some sort of weird joke here. It does seem to be that way, as it is available for free on his Patreon if you want to go and support him. But this got so bad that a person by the name of Derowan, basically, who is another mod creator, is also making these paid-for mods for reskins of his characters. And someone in the responses basically said, "You're not the same guy as the person who did the Balatro game and watch Are You?" He says, "No, but I want to be as good an artist as him. If you want to know my opinion on the case, he has a thread on it on his profile. Now, I did go ahead and read through this mostly on stream, but I'm going to basically give you a summary of it now. His opinion was a lot more nuanced, saying that he does understand why the whole paying for mod things and why people are upset about this, because a lot of mods themselves are free. But he also understands that from a modding perspective, he does have his own method for doing this. Now, again, if you want my personal opinion on this and want to watch his, I'll probably link his everything in the description below, at least. Moop and the other guy. If not in the description, I'll probably put it in the pinned comments or something, so you can go ahead and watch that. But overall, my opinion on this whole thing about paid for mods and modding in general is this. Mods themselves are usually made out of the goodness and kindness of people's hearts, but there is enough in there to basically ask for compensation. Should you pay for mods or should you not pay for mods is the big question I think a lot of people want me to answer here. In my personal opinion, I don't personally, in my own opinion, do not want to pay for mods most of the time. Now, if it's something like, say, an avatar for a video game, or if it's something I can do myself, or if it's, say, something that is created for verbatim or originality, maybe, maybe not, but that's more of a just general opinion on this. I do think that it is very case dependent, and even in those case dependent sums, they can change over time, much like all other cases in general. Modding itself is in a state where it's usually community made and usually already slightly illegal for reasons of copyright infringement in general. Overall, to say that modding itself needs to be monetized or communities itself needs to be utilized or something is just, it's a very strange opinion to have here. Overall, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if there is paid for mods, that's not necessarily the end of the world. If it becomes the norm, then there will be enough people who will probably take up modding to balance out the people who want to pay for it, or there will just be more online piracy of those specific mods. I don't think that there is a specific right answer here. I do think that there are good ways to attempt to create mods, but still monetize it and still help your career out, mainly through not paywalling your mods, but paying for, say, early access to your mods or paying for special benefits to those mods, but still keeping the general modding itself to some sort of easy to use or some sort of, loyalty system or something. You'd really have to brainstorm it out dependent on your audience. But again, overall, I would say, while at first I didn't really think that this, like, paying for mods is a good idea, I have since come around to understanding why people, one, pay for mods, and two, why people make mods that should be paid for. Again, it does take a lot of work to create even just a simple mod, but again, that's more of just my own personal opinion. So, I know probably going to be called a fence sitter on this and being like, you have to not pay for mods or you have to be defendant of it because you're a developer. No, I don't. Overall, my opinion is if you can monetize your mods, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't, but it is a kind of bad practice to make your mods pay for. There are certainly other ways to get monetization for online goods and services, but modding is not necessarily the best way, in my opinion, to kind of go about doing that, especially if you're a first timer. Overall, I think that's about to do it for this episode of I Ran Into a Microphone solely about game development for one reason or another. If you like what it is that I do for one reason, if you like what it is that I do, please check me out on both Twitch and YouTube. Here, I stream every Sunday at 12 p.m. EST. Come on by and say hi. If you want to drop me a tip down below, I do have some other places where you can go and support me and my content, as well as my second channel where I'm uploading more frequently. If you like anything else, I don't really have anything else. My name is GamePenguin21, and a peace off.
Hey man!